Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a big box, which I've already disassembled to make my life easier. It's this Leonard Bernstein, the Symphony Edition on Sony. 60 fun-filled CDs of symphonies with Leonard Bernstein conducting. Now, you know, when I started this channel, a lot of the Bernstein boxes no longer existed. And so I didn't cover them separately or when they came out. But some of you said, would I do them? And I'm happy to do them. Why not? It gives us a overview of Bernstein's work as you know, his complete output, his oeuvre as a conductor. And they make wonderful, like, things to lean on while you're chatting, you know, these boxes, because this is the album size box that like fits nowhere. And when you open it up, you get a little booklet. Here's a little booklet. It's kind of a skimpy booklet, but at least it has a track listing. Thank goodness. And you get this. You get this sort of, you know, I have to do this so they don't all fall out. You get the discs in a tray thing. And since there are 60 discs, you get 15 globs of them in 4 trays that sometimes they shift around and get mixed up in the box, and it's a real pain in the neck to unscramble them. I don't know how they manage to get scrambled, but they do. Take my word for it. I opened this up, and number 14 was where number 60 ought to be, or I don't know. Anyway, but they're all in there. They're all in there, and it's fine. And so we have this large Bernstein box. There were 3 boxes in this series, by the way. There was symphonies, then there was other orchestral stuff and like overtures and concertos, and then there was vocal music. Those were the 3. And then there was a smaller box of Bernstein doing Bernstein, and all kinds of stuff because they reissue this thing endlessly. There was also, I love this. This is really comfortable. There was also a Bernstein remastered boxy box, regular box. So who knows what the reissue world will hold. But I'm going to cover all these at some point, I think. I mean, if you want me to, I'm happy to do it. I think they're interesting. And of course, Bernstein was one of the great genius conductors, so it doesn't hurt to talk about it, does it? So let's look at this, shall we? It begins, obviously, with Beethoven. That'll cover the first 5 discs. And, you know, one of the things that is interesting is Bernstein made more than one recording of some things. He did the Symphonie Fantastique a couple times. He did Beethoven's 7th a couple times. Well, you don't get those duplicate ones in here. Those are over in an appendix in one of the other boxes. And since those other boxes aren't available, this is not complete. You would think, wouldn't you, that they would just find all the symphonies, stuff them. I'm looking through this thing. Stuff them all in here and then be done with it. But no, somebody had to like think of something. Oh, that's always dangerous when you're dealing with these people, isn't it? But you do get a Beethoven cycle, and it's a very good Beethoven cycle. Bernstein was always a very, very good Beethoven conductor, and some people prefer his New York Philharmonic Beethoven to his later Vienna Beethoven because they're a little bit rougher, a little bit edgier, sometimes a little bit quicker, but they're very similar in most respects. So you've got his Beethoven cycle. I mean, I like his Beethoven. It's fun, and it's bold, and he pays attention to the bass lines. He really does, unlike so many other conductors. So that's wonderful. Then we've got Berlios, the Symphonie Fantastique, one of them. Let me see which one it is. Does it say which one it is? Oh, I can't even bother to look. You know, there are a couple, and this is one of them. And you get his lecture. Berlios Takes a Trip. Some of these talks he recorded, these are fun. These are really fun. So that's nice to have. And then we've got Bernstein doing Bernstein, his first 2 symphonies. Remember, he did the second twice. There's a stereo one, and then there was the early mono one, and then the Kaddish Symphony, and it's coupled so appropriately with Bizet's Symphony in C. Well, let me put it this way. It may be a somewhat odd coupling because this is actually alphabetically arranged. That's how they did this. But better they should include it and give you a nice full CD than doing what they're doing now, which is breaking everything up into individual LP issues or single things and giving you really short playing time so that they can sell you more discs. I mean, this is still a bargain. And God knows what the next iteration is going to do to make it less of a bargain. if there is ever another iteration. So there you go. Then we got Mark Blitzstein, the Airborne Symphony. That's really cool. That's really interesting. Blitzstein was a theater composer for the most part, and really a very, very good one. And the Airborne Symphony is fun. It's for chorus, and it's got it was written during World War II to sort of celebrate the Air Force and the Allied forces, and it's very exciting. And Bernstein was the only guy who really did it, and so it's great to have. Then we've got, let's see, Brahms Cycle. Bernstein's Brahms I always found somewhat less interesting than a lot of his other composers. He tends to be a little bit, I don't know, maybe a little overawed by it. Maybe that's the wrong term. His first Brahms cycle, this one, is certainly 100% better than his unbelievably slow and droopy second Brahms cycle with Vienna on DG. So if you want to hear his Brahms, this is the way to do it. And the coupling to Brahms' fourth is just fabulous. It's Carlos Chavez's Sinfonia India and David Diamond's Fourth Symphony. Just the thing to go with Brahms' fourth. Again, I'm joking. It's wonderful to have this music. I don't care how they couple it, as long as it's all in here. But it's ironic that they work so hard to stuff in all of these pieces, and they don't include the full Bernstein symphonies. That even when he made duplicates, I don't know. Okay. Bruckner 9, his first Bruckner ninth. I always liked his way with Bruckner ninth, especially the really slow pounding scherzo. It's a wonderful expressive performance of Bruckner's ninth. Why not? And then we've got Copland, his organ symphony with an organ. That's his symphony number 1. And the third, which is wonderful. He never did the short symphony, interestingly enough. But that's okay. That would have been number 2, or the dance symphony. But we've got those two, and all on one CD. So at least the Copland stuff has the Copland stuff. Dvorak, Symphony number 7 with the Franck D minor. And then, well, we sort of go out of the alphabetical order to make room for things. And then the Dvorak New World with the Roy Harris Third. Actually, that kind of works because Roy Harris is American and the New World is from the New World. And the Franck D minor is very good. And the Dvorak Seventh is surprisingly good. It's one of the best ones out there. Most people don't know it. He didn't stay in print very long, but it's really marvelous. And he didn't do any other Dvorak. He didn't do the Eighth. He didn't do it. It's kind of odd. He should have done more Dvorak. He really should have. He would have been really wonderful at it. Then we've got Karl Goldmark, the Rustic Wedding Symphony, with Hindemith's Symphony in E flat. Again, some of the real gems of the Bernstein discography are these one-off things. The Goldmark is fabulous. It's the reference version of that piece. The Hindemith Symphony in E flat is one of the great 20th century symphonies. Nobody knows it. This is fabulous. It's just an amazing performance. Bernstein did quite a bit of Hindemith. He was a fabulous Hindemith conductor. He liked that music. He believed in it. And oh boy, that Symphony in E flat is a knockout. Just a knockout. Fantastic. Then we've got Haydn. We've got Haydn's the Paris Symphonies and the London Symphonies and, let's see, the 88th and most of his Haydn. It all seems to basically be here, which is really good. Bernstein was, of course, perhaps the 20th century's greatest Haydn conductor overall. He just got Haydn. He turned in fantastic big band Haydn with all of the humor and wonderfulness that the music has. The only performance in here that's a little on the iffy side was number 98, the one with the little harpsichord or keyboard thing in the last movement. That one is a little bit slow and deliberate and kind of, I don't know, it's interesting. It's an interesting performance. It's not one of Bernstein's usual sort of knock 'em, sock 'em, exciting performances. It's studied. Maybe that's the word. And so it's kind of odd, but what the heck, everyone's entitled to do one strangely, I think. So after Haydn, we have Charles Ives, Symphonies 2 and 3, and Bernstein discussing Charles Ives, which is really rather nifty. And the Liszt Faust Symphony, his first recording. He did 2, and I just did a talk actually on the second one of them, which is one of Dave's faves, the one with the Boston Symphony on Deutsche Grammophon, which is amazing. Oh, my goodness. But this first one is not a slouch of a piece either. Bernstein really felt something for this music, and he conducted it very, very powerfully. So this is cool. I mean, not many people get to do two Faust symphonies. Some of you pointed out that Jascha Horenstein did two. Ugh, doesn't count. Okay, so then we've got the Mahler Cycle. The Mahler Cycle, here is the Mahler Cycle. And mixed in with the Mahler Cycle, with Mahler's Third Symphony, is Randall Thompson's Symphony Number 2, which really doesn't really have much business being there, but it has to be somewhere. So we've got the first Mahler Cycle. Now, the first Mahler Cycle, including the Adagio of Number 10, is really very, very good. I mean, some of it is absolutely wonderful. There are some performances that he never surpassed, I think. And those are, let's see. Okay, we've got, well, he did two twice. Well, he did it 3 times if you include DG, or 4 times if you include the video, or 5 times if you include the final movement that he did separately with the Israel Philharmonic. But the big ones are the New York Phil one and then the London Symphony one, which is somewhere else. But that's okay. Let's see. We have this Mahler Cycle, and we have, let's see, the great ones we were talking about, right? 3, 4, 6, 7, and 9, and 8, I think. 8 really is quite wonderful. The sonics are not the best in the universe, but it's a pretty fabulous interpretation. Number 1 he redid better later. I think number 2, his best one was his DG New York Philharmonic one, although the first New York Philharmonic one is very good too. So yeah, it's wonderful. We get, let's see, with the Mahler 10 Adagio, you get Mendelssohn's Scottish Symphony, that inevitable coupling, and you also get Mendelssohn's Fourth and Fifth, the Italian and the Reformation. Bernstein was a great Mendelssohn conductor. He was one of those, you have to remember. Let me chat for a second here. Here, let me take out my armrest. Okay, here's the deal. Conductors of Bernstein's generation, who were raised and grew up in the first half of the 20th century, were raised with Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn ceased to matter sometime around 1950 or 60. I'm not quite sure why, because the music is fantastic. But, the image of Mendelssohn as a Victorian wimp who, wasn't very interesting was sort of, which was a creation of a lot of sort of miserable anti-Semitism at the beginning of the 20th century and at the end of the 19th. That was all gone, but the music seemed to lose favor. But conductors like Bernstein grew up with this stuff. They were taught it. And so he took to it naturally. And his recordings of the Mendelssohn symphonies, these here, and also the ones he did later with the Israel Philharmonic on Deutsche Grammophon, they're just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. But I really wonder what's happening with Mendelssohn interpretation nowadays, because you do see people doing, like Yannick Nézet-Séguin or the period instrument people. They'll toss off a Mendelssohn cycle very casually. And the results, I think, have been very unappealing for the most part, and kind of glib and uninteresting. Mendelssohn was a romantic, a real romantic composer whose music is far more interesting and passionate than today's interpretations, I think, would indicate. And if you listen to the recordings by Bernstein and his colleagues, Schulte did them, and, Ormandy did them, Zell did some of them, you just find a different world of music that matters in the way they play Mendelssohn. And I hope we see that again. I really do. In the meantime, we have these fantastic recordings, which is great. Mozart, the Linz Symphony and number 40 in G minor, along with Roussel's Third. Well, at least it's also in G minor. It's a good idea. Bernstein's Roussel is stunning. He did the Third Symphony twice. The DG one with the Orchestre de Paris or whatever one it is over there, I think is perhaps a little bit more powerful. But they're both wonderful performances. I mean, again, he knew this stuff because his mentor was Serge Koussevitzky, and Roussel wrote the piece for the Boston Symphony in 1929, the 50th anniversary of the Boston Symphony, and Bernstein was sort of an heir to a lot of that repertoire. So that's fantastic. Now, his Mozart was always a little bit mannered, I think, and a little bit a little bit, uber expressive. The trouble with Bernstein's Mozart, and most of it's really good, and his Vienna remakes are beautiful. So, it wasn't that he couldn't do Mozart. It was that he was in competition on Sony with Bruno Walter, first of all, and then George Sells, second of all, who were, they knew Mozart. Not just kidding, but they were stunning Mozartians. And so that was kind of he was at a disadvantage. It's nice to be able to listen to his Mozart separately and reevaluate it, because it's like his Haydn. It's very, very good. I think he tended to treat Mozart with a little bit more indulgence than he did Haydn. There's more overt expressivity in the interpretation with regard to tempo and milking the tunes and whatnot. And so some people might not like that so much, but it's good big band Mozart. It's what it is. Then we've got his Nielsen. He did numbers 2, 4, 3, and 5, which is rather extraordinary. 3 and 5 are fabulous. 2 is okay. It's a little slow in my view, a little logy. 4 is terrible. 4 is one of those performances where he just pulls it around like taffy, and I don't know why he did that. It was so unhelpful. And we're already up to number 42, so we're making big progress here. Prokofiev, the Classical Symphony, and Symphony number 5. This is a really good Symphony number 5, and it's much better than his later remake, which was a digital Israel Phil thing, I believe, and because the Shostakovich 5th was with New York, and the 5th, I think, and the Prokofiev was with Israel. Yeah, I think that's how it went. And it's not in here, of course, because it's in the later box of extra symphony recordings. And why did they do that? Why, oh why, oh why, oh why. Saint-Saëns, Symphony number 3, and Schubert's 5th. Well, the Saint-Saëns is sort of damaged by, of course, the usual problem with the organ and what you're going to do to have one. And the interpretation's okay, but the sound is just so-so. And it's not one of the great organ symphonies, and there are a bunch out there, so we don't need to worry about it. And there was Ormandy's Sony one, which is fabulous, and the Charles Munch RCA. And yeah. Okay. Schubert 5th, very, very pretty. The unfinished and the great C major, it's like his Haydn, first rate. Absolutely first rate. His remakes of these works with the Concertgebouw are also stunning. Absolutely stunning. And some people might prefer those because it's the Concertgebouw, but these are good. These are really good. And then we get William Schumann, his 3rd symphony, his Symphony for Strings, which is number 5, and his Symphony number 8. Now, 3 is a good work. 8 is also a good work, I think, sort of. I'm not a fan of William Schumann. I think he's very, pedantic and kind of formulaic in the way he writes music. I think the String Symphony is hideously awful. It is a colorless, monochrome bore, period. Some of you may disagree. I saw it live. Oh, what a snooze. You know what killed me about the Schumann 5th Symphony is that he doesn't do anything to exploit, like, the color of a string orchestra. You'd think they'd do some ponticello, some tremolo, some cool pizzicato thing, something, anything. It's not. It's just a dull, monochromatic, tuneless grind. But Bernstein recorded it. Good for him. And he did 3 and 8. So that's better for him. Then we've got Robert Schumann. Oh, it's the Schumann Cycle, right? No, his early one. Yeah, they're all here. What am I thinking? Yeah, all 4 of them. I skipped a line. Bernstein was a great Schumann conductor. This is a great Schumann Symphony Cycle. He believed in not tinkering with the orchestration, which meant he had to make his points through dynamic adjustments and textural clarity, which he largely does really, really well. His Vienna Schumann Cycle is more manic. It's even more crazy and more romantic. It's more Schumann in the asylum with more extremes of tempo than this Schumann Cycle, but they're both wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And then we've got, this is great, Harold Shapiro, the Symphony for Classical Orchestra. It's just a work of genius, a fabulous 20th century symphony in the Stravinskian mode, which Harold Shapiro enthusiastically adopted and stuck with for his entire career. And you get the Stravinsky Symphony of Psalms, which is really a choral work. It's not really a symphony at all, but what the hell? So that's in here. Then we've got all the Shostakovich that he did. So that's symphonies numbers 1, 6, 5, 9, 7, 4, and 14. Now, Now, most of these are really good. 1, 5, 6, and 9 are fantastic. 7 is ruled out by the fact that Bernstein makes a cut in the first movement of the Leningrad. Actually, a bunch of little cuts. He cuts the repeats in one of the repetitions of that endless build-up, sort of bolero theme in the first movement. So that rules it out of court for me. It really does. I mean, he should never have done that. Naughty boy. Shame on him. 14 is just, it's not very good. It has, who are the soloists here? I mean, they're listed here. Let me find out. Shostakovich. It's, Teresa Kubiak and Isser Bushkin, who are so-so. And the interpretation is oddly heavy and lacking in bite and discipline from the string section. It was one of the last recordings that Bernstein did for Sony, actually, or with the New York Philharmonic. It came out way after he left. I think there was something that didn't go right with that. And it was released anyway. Just because. And then a couple to the Shostakovich 14th is the Sibelius Third. Another wonderful pairing of things that are like, chocolate sauce on beef Wellington, something like that. I don't know. So you've got the Sibelius Cycle, which is one of the great ones. It has no weak links whatsoever, and it is just marvelous. Some of it is a little scruffy in terms of string playing, but what the hell. And it's got one of the all-time great firsts. And the 7th is just amazing. And, they're just really wonderful performances. And then we have his Tchaikovsky Cycle. Now, Bernstein did the 4th twice as well. And they're both here. No, they're not both here. What am I kidding? It's Ron Williams' 4th. Oops! Because that brings it to the end of the whole thing with the letter V. All right, so the second, number 4, is in the other box. Or maybe this is the second and the first one is in the other box. I mean, when you've got 60 CDs, what difference does it make? You've got a complete Tchaikovsky Cycle, which is really, really good. I mean, it's mostly first rate. It really is. And very, very spontaneous and emotional and fun, and with some strange tempos here and there. It's personal, and it's emotional, and it's what Tchaikovsky ought to be. And then it wraps up with that fabulous Vaughan Williams Symphony No. 4. Now, why did he do Vaughan Williams Symphony No. 4? He did the Vaughan Williams Symphony No. 4 because another one of his mentors, Dmitri Metropolis, also did the Vaughan Williams Symphony No. 4 and recorded it. Conductors do this. When Karajan got the Berlin Philharmonic, you may recall, one of his earliest recordings was Hindemith, the Mattis Mahler Symphony, which he did just horribly. But that was a Furtwängler premiere specialty, controversial. I mean, that was my master's thesis, the Hindemith case between Furtwängler and the Nazis and Hindemith. And it's a great story, with the Mattis Mahler Symphony at the heart of it. And so, of course, Karajan had to do what Furtwängler did. Well, Bernstein wanted to do what Metropolis did. So he remade the Vaughan Williams 4th, and it's fantastic. It's a wonderful, wonderful performance. He actually played bits of it in one of the young people's concerts, which is really kind of cool. And it's a wonderful, wonderful performance. So that's great. And that's your 60-disc Bernstein symphony box. Now, overall, what are the great things in it? Well, there's much more great stuff than bad stuff. I mean, in terms of standard cycles, Beethoven's very good. And the Haydn is incomparable, and the Sibelius is fabulous, and the Tchaikovsky is really good, and the Schumann is amazing, and the Schubert is terrific, and the Mendelssohn is fantastic. And then you get the one-offs, the things that Bernstein didn't, he remade everything basically, but the things that were not as famous or popular. You've got the Roussel Third, you've got the Hindemith Symphony D flat, the Goldmark Rustic Wedding Symphony, the Blitzstein, whatever he was, Airborne Symphony. I mean, some of these real gems in the American stuff, the William Schumann stuff, the Harris Third, the Coplands, and Bernstein's own music, of course, let's not forget. So the result is an extraordinary collection of stuff. Now, of course, a lot of this was remastered and included in the Bernstein Remastered Edition. So we're going to have to talk about that too, aren't we? And so you can make up your mind. But at the moment, I don't know for how long this thing is available. It's around. And so you can probably still get it, even if you can't get the other ones, and even if it's not complete, because the other symphonies that Bernstein did are elsewhere. Okay, I know, I keep going. I just have this existential sigh of like, why? when they do these things. But we can take heart in the fact that if you don't get this, probably some other iteration of all this stuff will come out in some massive box thing someday in the maybe not too distant future. And it may be that CDs no longer exist then, but they'll find a way. They always do. It's like Jurassic Park. Nature always finds a way. Well, the Bernstein organization always finds a way. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.